only 31% of the people out there trust HR.
They got to know that you're willing to go to bat for them and that you're going to work hard to look out for them so they're not getting stepped on by the company.
Hey. More things I could solve for people, the better the organization got.
If you're in the group where 69% of the people in your organization don't want to come talk to you, that's a problem. That's something you need to pay attention to.
This will probably rub a lot of people the wrong way, but the reality is, hey there, I'm Jeff Cordes, and welcome to the C.R.A.P Leadership Podcast. My philosophy is about C.R.A.P, caring, respect, appreciation, and praise.
And this is Randy Walensky. Been a speaker, trainer, sales professional, and coach for over 10 years, using all of Jeff's C.R.A.P. And we want to bring these principles to you in your organization. Let's jump in.
Today, we are talking about why people don't trust HR. And we're going to give you 3 things that we're going to cover today. We're going to make it quick. Here's what they are. HR, you need to mingle with your people. It's scary. Ooh, I've got stuff to do. But you need to get out and you need to leave that door open and be welcoming. We'll talk about it. Get real. Be authentic. That's the biggest problem. Nobody likes a stuffed shirt. Nobody likes the suits, right, where you're uppity. And nobody wants to talk to a robot that just goes by policies. We're going to talk about it. Be fast with correcting poor behavior. Nothing is worse than seeing the worst people in the organization constantly evade any kind of ramifications for their job. So those are the 3 things we're going to cover, but I'm going to let Jeff kick us off because he's the veteran, 25 years in HR?
Long time in HR. But, I working with a lot of organizations I do as a consultant, I hear different things from employees and HR managers, and we talk about what their day's like. And I was kind of curious because of the feedback I got from, or I get from a lot of employees is there's a lack of trust of HR people. So I went on the internet and I started looking for some studies and, saw a couple and the numbers kind of run the same. About only 31% of the people out there trust HR. I mean, it is an abysmal number. I mean, and it's scary because we talk about trust and how trust drives retention and all those things. Well, most employees view HR as the final resort, and that's problematic because we're killing retention, we're killing engagement. And everybody talks about how engagement is huge from a standpoint of productivity and everything like that. But HR should be one of those drivers that drives leaders and other people, and you got to lead by example. And I see a lot of organizations I go into where that's not the case. I also see, and I'll talk about some of the examples I do see, HR leaders that are doing it right. And I want to bring those up because, we have a fairly large portion of our listener group is HR. And so I want to give them not only the takeaways, but some examples of clients that I have that are really good from a standpoint of people trusting them, willing to come into the office, et cetera.
Well, that's a scary statistic that you just dropped. If 69% of people don't want to go to HR, if they're either afraid of HR or they just don't find them helpful, that's terrible because these are the people that you're supposed to go to when you have the toughest issues, when you have problems with different people in the organization, when you have problems with your manager and you can't go to them to talk about it, or you've tried talking to them. The last thing you want is these people scaring those people away because, as you mentioned, hello, retention. I've got nobody to go to deal with my issues. I don't want to go deal with them. I've tried dealing with them before, and they never help. They make a bunch of excuses. They ping pong. They're ineffective. Nobody wants to deal with that. So if you're in the group where 69% of the people in your organization don't want to come talk to you, that's a problem. That's something you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I go back to when I went, when I was an undergrad and doing my master's, one of the things that he talked about that HR had 3 roles. One was a third of your job was compliance. Another third was to be a business partner. And the other third was to be an advocate for employees. I mean, I don't know what they're telling them now, but what I see is a lot of young HR people they're more concerned with compliance and the paperwork, or so focused on being an advocate for the business that they've forgotten that the employees and their role, people are their business. And that's a problem. And I will tell you, in the days when we did a third, it was a tough balancing act. I mean, it was really difficult because, it's one thing to be a business partner and be advocating for the business, but also watching out for the employees. I found myself in a crack many times because of that, between those two. But we had to navigate it, and employees appreciated the fact that if something was going wrong, HR would stand up and talk to management and say, hey, this is a problem. We shouldn't be doing this. But for some reason, that's changed. I see too many people I don't see people being as much of an employee advocate as they used to be.
Well, I think they've become the CYA department. That's my concern. They're not the people's advocates at all. And that's probably why people don't want to go to them, because they feel like they're going to get corporate BS. They're going to get the safe answers to protect themselves, their job, and the company. And granted, you are there to protect the company from fraudulent claims, from people making up excuses, from people not doing their jobs and saying it's your fault and you need to pay me and I was discriminated. I get it. People suck a lot of times. So you have to protect the business from the bad people. On the flip side of things, you got to protect the good people. They got to know that you're willing to go to bat for them and that you're going to work hard to look out for them. So they're not getting stepped on by the company. Hey, and you've told me tons of stories. Hey, we could just read chapters from HR horror stories, Jeff. That could be what we're doing. It could be a book reading podcast. But there's so many opportunities there where at least the HR person, this is your role. You have to have the integrity to know what your role is. It's to protect the business from the terrible people, and it's protect the people from bad decisions that somebody in management or somebody in the business is making, and to be their voice. So you're not just, again, the paper pusher, the compliance person. You have a bigger purpose. You got to live into that.
And to me, we talked about when we did the visibility podcast. One of the best ways to get people to trust you is they got to see you, they got to know you. And the other thing is they might be coming to talk to you someday, but you got your door closed. I mean, that's problematic. I mean, I worked for one boss early on that you were expected to have your door open all the time unless you were doing something that was highly confidential. And if you closed your door, when I would emerge or any other leader would emerge from their office, they'd immediately be asked by the president, why do you have your door closed? You want to know? Because we talked about our open door policy, because people needed to know that we were accessible. And I used to love it when people would walk by my door and I'd do a shout out to them and say, how's it going? They'd stop in, we'd BS and that sort of thing. And they got to know me. I got to know them. And I'll give you an example. One of my clients, the chief operating officer in this company, they wanted to move him into more of the executive area because when he first came in, he wasn't at that level, but his office is 15 feet away from the bathroom. And he loves it. And he loves it. He says, because everybody's got to go to the John. And so as a result, people will be walking by his office and he gets a chance to say hi and they stop in. And so he's not viewed as a suit. And so he strategically used that to build visibility and to build rapport with people.
Hey, you got to use whatever you've got. And if it's being next to the bathroom man, hey, that might be it, right?
Yeah, it may sound crazy, but it really works, because then when I'm visiting him, even when I'm visiting him, unless we're talking about something that's highly confidential, we'll have the door open. And people are waving and saying, hey, Rick, how's it going? it's phenomenal. I mean, that leads to the first takeaway we talked about. Number one takeaway is you got to be visible, and and part of being visible is to have an open door.
Mm.
We talked extensively about open doors and an open door policy and all that sort of stuff. So be visible, and part of that is having an open door.
What about the natural and obvious pushback, right? I got to get stuff done. I've got lots of confidential stuff. I've got all these projects and things that they're asking me of. I'd like to have my door wide open all the time, but then I'll never get anything done.
Well, this will probably rub a lot of people the wrong way, but the reality is I didn't do any project work at work. I did it when I got home, or if I needed to get something done, I would stay home a particular day and I'd work at home. And because my boss has always said, you're not here to push paper. You're an employee relations guy. You're a human resource person. Your job is people. And that was the emphasis. And I don't know if enough of that is coming from senior leadership to HR anymore. I had one boss that said, he said, if you have to make a choice between pushing paperwork or talking to people, you need to be talking to people.
You push the paperwork aside for the people. I like it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was, and the other thing is as an HR person, and I've said this before, I like people. And as a result, to me, when somebody walked by, bring me a problem, the more things I could solve for people, the better the organization got, and the better it got for our people. And that's what kept people satisfied and fulfilled, and so they wanted to stay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you do have those other responsibilities, but if you are the people person and you want to drive other aspects of it, a lot of that has to do with communication, right? So you having that open door policy, prioritizing people over the projects. But yes, I'm sure there's somebody right now who's building their their wellness and their work-life balance slide deck right now going, no way am I going to take one extra minute outside of work and be doing anything. I got to fit it all in the day, and that's just it.
But it's interesting. I know a lot of younger and older HR people, and I'll give you an example. One young lady that I at the gym where I work out, she got promoted into a regional role in her organization from just a pure plant to multiple plants. And she said to me, I don't know if I'm going to be at morning class anymore because she said, I want to see what the schedules look like at my 3 plants because I want to be there for my people. I want to make sure we don't forget about third shift.
So she's augmenting her life around her work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Usually the opposite. How about that?
Yeah, she said, I might, instead of working 8 to 4 like I work now, I'm going to have to do 7 to 3 or 7 to 4. And she's the type of person, she'll advance. I mean, she'll do well. I mean, she's phenomenal. And I know, again, older HR person, in one of my clients, she is always wandering around. And she's a governmental client. And so they've got locations, 6, 7 locations. She'll make it a point to go out to the Department of Public Works. She'll go to the jail and the sheriff's office. Just drop in, say hi. So people see her, know who she is. So then they feel like, maybe I know this person. When I got a problem, I feel comfortable going to that person. And the other thing is both of these individuals are very authentic. They're real. They talk about what their family, and they get to know people and all that sort of stuff. And it takes a certain amount of vulnerability, and you got to be comfortable saying, talking about your kids, what they do, so they start talking about their kids or their grandkids. I mean, you talk about the best one. I used to love walking around and I'd say, how are the grandkids doing, right? Whatever. Man, these people would go wild. Next thing you know, they take out their wallet. This is before the days of the cell phone, right?
Yes. Showing
Yeah, and now immediate thing they do is they take out that cell phone. Yeah, let me show you pictures of the grandkids. I was over there the other day, and they're really growing. People love that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're real, you're authentic, so people feel comfortable going to you.
Yes.
And again, that would be my second takeaway: is you got to be real, you got to be authentic, and you kind of alluded to it. You don't want to be just a suit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, that just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I wanted to put one thing on what you said last. I'll give people a takeaway of something actionable in this modern hybrid work from home, work in the office. If you really need to get something done, it's probably better for you to do it at home, even if you're not in the office, than to be in your office and have the door closed. Because if you're not there, you're not there. Who's gonna complain about that? But if you're constantly having the door closed because you have so many projects to do, maybe you need to work 3 days in the office, 2 days out that week. Just think about that. Like, again, do you have to be working at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night? Sometimes maybe, but not all the time. So there's a solution for you. Boom. All right. So skipping right ahead to being authentic, not being a shirt. Jeff and I were talking about this. Don't be a robot. This goes for a lot of areas. But if you are just pushing paper, if you are just giving the corporate answer and corporate spiel, and if you only come in to CYA, you know what you're going to be replaced by more or less? AI. AI can do all that stuff. I talk to Jeff about this all the time. If it's a salesperson, if it's a customer service person, and I talk to them and they're essentially a robot, they cannot do anything besides for what's on their script, or they repeat the same thing over and over again because they're not even thinking about it. I can get a chat bot to do a better job than them. The thing you run a risk if you're not good with people is all this stuff is being automated, all the paper pushing, all the compliance, all the right things. I can type into ChatGPT right now and find out how to fire people in my state. So you have to be more than that. You have to bring more to the table. Part of that is being a real, genuine human who cares about other humans. That's the place to start.
Right. And that's the authenticity that's being visible. Not at this point, they haven't developed. Elon's not to the point where we've developed a robot that can function by walking the shop floor or climbing through the lattice work on a cooling tower and talk with the guys on the crew and that sort of thing. I mean, that can't be replaced. That cannot be replaced. Whereas you talk about the paper pushing stuff, that's the sort of stuff that if that's all you do, you run the risk. I mean, all those HR people out there, better distinguish yourself now, because otherwise you may become obsolete in the next 5 years.
So many of us have to think about that, but especially if you're doing routine, basic classes, basic actions, you've got to step your game up because they are getting easier and there's going to be less demand for people to do that. But people who are great with other people and solve problems and issues and people they're irreplaceable. You're irreplaceable until we got robots that look like humans. They're irreplaceable. So that's an awesome one. Let's bring it home on the third takeaway before we let everyone go, which is dealing with poor behavior, dealing with problems in the organization. So I think this is what people think that's all that HR does. It's probably one of the most important things to do it and to do it well.
Well, one of the things I always said, if you have a rapport with people, they may not like you, but if they respect you, when you have to bring them in and talk to them about an issue and whatnot, and they know you're coming at it from the heart, you mean well, you want the best for people. Good employees run into issues at certain times, and you have to talk to them. But if they know you care, they're going to be much more receptive. And the likelihood that the message you need to get across is going to be better. You're going to deal with toxic employees. And one of the things I see more and more, and I believe, no offense to the younger generation, but we're a lot more fragile.
It's not even debatable because life has become. I'll go on. Let me field this one part for you, Jeff. The world has become so easy parents have become so easy, society has become so easy, everybody's bubble wrapped and kid gloves, that 100% every generation is going to be softer. And it's not necessarily their
Yeah,
fault.
that's
It's
true.
just life has gotten so easy. So you haven't run into your parents screaming at you, slapping you upside the head. When you had parents like that for boomers, right? The more traditional people, and boomers had to deal with that. Then the boss yelling at them was like nothing. Well, at least he didn't hit me. You know what I'm saying? So
Right,
it's
right.
the
Yeah,
it's nobody's fault, but it is the reality. Okay, now continue. That's the disclaimer.
yeah, no, I mean, well, and I think as a result, and the other thing is a lot of people have gotten more in your face.
Hmm.
I see a lot more passive aggressive behavior, and I see that with employees, and they're kind of in your face. So a lot of HR people I see are taken aback by that, and that's the last thing you want to do. I mean, you got a toxic employee, you need to bring them in, and you need to tell them, look, your behavior is unacceptable. Nobody wants to work with you. Uh, you're hurting our productivity, and you need to tell them the truth. I mean, you got to be. You always use the term, and I know we do when we're out there doing some training. Say firm but tactful. And even though I came up in a different era, I was never one of these in-your-face type of people. I never
Mhm.
swore at people, totally unacceptable. Uh, but I was firm, but I was direct and tactful. And but the key is you've got to deal with problems when they come up, because then all the other people in the organization see you doing that, and it raises your credibility.
Mm.
It raises your credibility and your prestige in HR. And I think then as a result, more people are willing to come to you. It it,
Domino
it
effect.
starts to develop that snowball effect. So, you know, uh, deal with your problem performers, and if you've got behavior issues, deal with them promptly. Do not hold off, because if you don't do anything, then people look at you and say, "Wow, man, that HR director, uh,
They're
they're a
useless.
weenie. They're a weenie, or they're clueless, right?" I mean, they look and say, "Well, what, the HR director must be clueless. This person's a problem, and nothing's getting done."
Yeah. The last thing you want people to think of you is that your department is useless. They never get anything done. They never fire the problem people. The people who are aggressive and bad for the culture know the right people and never get any discipline, never get any forced change. That's the last thing you want, because that's why people aren't going to come to you. What's the point? So you don't want to be what's the point of coming to me? So I'm glad you came to me. We're going to take it seriously. We're going
Right.
to look into it, and we will get back to you with what the resolution was. Even if the resolution is like, hey, he said, she said this, and that, but we made it clear that if this is going on, or this, and that, this is how it's going to be handled going forward. You can still draw a line in the sand, even if you can't
Totally.
prove it, right? So that's what people need to do. And you can't be afraid. You are the conflict department. You cannot be
I,
conflict averse. You are the mediators. You are the people in charge of resolving conflict. So get in there and deal with those things. Don't avoid them.
well, and what I often found was oftentimes the leaders of the department were conflict avoiders, and I'm hearing things because I'm out there, I'm wandering around. I've got an intelligence network of people, and I'm hearing from people that there's an issue, and then I'll go to the department manager and say, hey, what's going on? This is what I'm hearing. And I say, well, we need to deal with it. So I would be the one that oftentimes would surface things even before employees had to come to me as a last resort. You know what I mean? Uh,
Proactive.
Proactive. And I mean, that's what builds your credibility. And I think we need to start doing more of these things as HR leaders. I think that's huge. I mean, so for today, our three takeaways are: get out of your office and keep your and keep your door open. Be real, be authentic. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. And the last one is deal with poor behavior promptly. So those would be the three takeaways. if you like what you're hearing, or in this case, we get a lot of HR listeners, you don't like what you're hearing, let us know. We're giving our thoughts. I mean, sometimes I feel like we're throwing a hand grenade in the room, but if we don't do these type of things, we think you won't grow as leaders and won't be able to do your best in your role, and be, whether it's an HR leader, production leader, no matter what it is, be the best you can be.
Yeah.
So if you like what you're hearing, like us, subscribe, go ahead, Randy.
Share it out to somebody who needs to hear this. Share it out to your HR leader at your organization if you think they could benefit from it, or you've been having these discussions with them. Jeff already mentioned comment. That could be and those couple points that we brought in, and I think you've maybe brought up one. I think we should do something on we don't have to do it next, but we should do something on work-life balance. So I think a lot of people have gotten both sides of that, and we kind of brought it up today. I could see that being something. But yeah, besides for that, those are the three things to do. We appreciate you, and looking forward to next week too.
Hey, I'm Jeff Cordes. Remember, give your employees crap. Why? Because crap works.
We'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Take care all.